This is Cherry Creek. Wow, look at it. It came all at once. Danado, don't go in the water. Got my shoe put in a plastic bag to keep it dry. knocking that yellow sign over. This is our estimate of the flow from that Cherry Creek flood that we observed on Saturday, July 24th at about 5 p.m. when we were trying to drive out. What we have here is we have on the top up here, we have the flow monitor at Cracker Jack, which is about a mile downstream from where we were. Unfortunately, as you can see here, it peaks out at 40 cubic feet per second, and then it saturates. And so once it goes beyond that, there's no number, and it just, when it comes back below that, it comes back into range. But below that, we have the water flow monitor at Childs, which is about 15 miles downstream as a crow flies, and you can see that on this map. This is my estimate of the distance from Childs to Cracker Jack. I took the map and I put in Childs, and it came up at this point right here. And then I just drew a line over to the stream flow monitor site at Cracker Jack. It's about 3 miles downstream from the cabin, which is up here. And unfortunately, the flow monitor at Cracker Jack limit only goes up to 40 cubic feet per second. After that, it just saturates out. The one down at Childs goes over 1,000 cubic feet per second. So we should be able to see what the flow rate from that Cherry Creek flood was by looking here downstream and trying to figure out how far it is downstream. You can see the line, this blue line here that I drew is 9.4 inches. The 1 mile distance on the map is 0.6, so that makes it about 15 or 16 miles from here to here. But that's as the crow flies. Of course, the river actually meanders quite a bit, and it's hard to see on this because the line is so, but the river goes like this. You can see I'm tracing it down, this blue, and there's a lot of big switchbacks, and obviously it doesn't go, it follows the terrain all the way up through here, through here, through here. And Michelle have walked it, not this piece, but we've seen a lot of those switchbacks, and it finally comes back here. So even though it's 15 miles as the crow flies, it's probably maybe 5 or 10 miles more. It's 20 or 25 miles of actual flow. In any case, this gives us an estimate of the distance, and from that, the time delay from the stream monitors, we can estimate the current flow, and I estimated it at maximum of 3 miles per hour and probably closer to 2 because of this meandering, and that sounds about right for water. But and the other thing to note about these two charts is this one here peaks out at 40, but this one here goes all the way 1,000. So you see these big spikes, and this one looks a lot bigger, but it's actually much smaller than these. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this little peak right here on the 20th of July. I'm sorry, on the 20th of July, and right here here's the peak on the 20th at Cracker Jack, and it's within range. It's 13, and down here you can see it at Childs, and it's 24. So that might be water loss as it goes down the stream, and some of it gets absorbed, especially since there hasn't been a lot of rainfall before that, and the ground is dry, especially if the river's up a little higher. But that gives us a way of figuring out what the time delay is. And if you look right here, this happened at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, July 20th, and the flow is 13 cubic feet per second. And here, the flow is 29, the peak, and it's at it's about 5 hours later. It's 1 p.m. And so the delay is 5 hours. If it was 15 miles as a crow flies, that'd be 3 miles an hour. But as we saw on the map, on the distance calculation, it's meandering a lot, so it might be much smaller than that. So in any case, that's just sort of a quick estimate of the time delay that when you see the peak here and how much longer it takes to get downstream here. And so, and now we're going to go look at the flood, which should be right here. If you look down at the bottom here, that's the peak after, that we observed, 577. But we don't know if there's any rainfall between Cracker Jack and Child. So all of the water down here at this, there may be some additional water that was flowing, from the rain downstream, although we didn't see any. So in any case, the Cherry Creek flood, the Cherry Creek flood, occurred on the 24th, Saturday, and you can see right here is where the water flow monitor quickly saturates, and that corresponds to this peak here. This peak here was the day before when we weren't there, and that corresponds to this peak. But we're looking at this one here where it's saturated, and so I think it's this one here, 577 cubic feet per second. And then we observed, while the Cherry Creek flood was going on, the Verde River upstream was just normal. At the end of it, at about, when it was over, our neighbor observed that the East Verde River had risen also. And in fact, I actually got trapped I went back to the cabin after this flood, and I tried to drive out on Sunday morning at 8, and I was trapped probably by this flood, this peak right here. And this peak here, the second one, was 835 cubic feet per second. And that was probably the bigger flood. And then this is the one we actually observed, or I actually observed, 577. So how much of that 577 was from Cherry Creek? Probably most of it, since I don't think there's any other sources. But that's our estimate of the Cherry Creek flood at its peak. And of course, as it goes downstream, the peak spreads out compared to here. But again, it's a few hundreds of cubic feet per second is what that flood was. That's the summary of this analysis.